What I love is that usually there are multiple ways to do just about anything, right? Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be making these strawberry trivets. We're going to do raw edge applique and we're going to be doing some fabric painting. Doesn't that sound fun? Join me as we walk through this pattern, and I'm hoping to spark some creativity for you. Let's take a look at this pattern. In the PDF, there is a placement guide. It's the last 6 pages, okay? And with the placement guide, you're going to cut it out on the outside line. And there are glue tabs attached, so you'll just include that when you're cutting out your pages, right? And you can just use a glue stick just to glue them together. So I like to glue the top half together and then glue the bottom half together and then join them just like this. Now the instructions don't say this, but I find it way easier once I have it joined together just to trim it right around the outside. Just makes it a little bit easier to work with. So there's our placement guide for this project. Now let's move on to the fabric applique. This project does come with an included SVG file if you have a cutting machine. If you're cutting out by hand, there are mirror imaged tracing templates in the PDF. So you can use your favorite fusible and trace each one of these shapes. You're going to need 4 of them, right? 4 stems, 4 strawberries, and 4 leaves. Check out how nice this pen writes. It's a gel pen from the Dollar Tree. It's my favorite pen. So you'll trace out each one of these shapes and fuse them onto the back side of your fabric, right? But I'm going to use the SVGs and I'm going to send over the strawberries to my scan and cut. Now I've picked out 4 charms from this charm pack, Riley Blake's Prim by Lori Holt. Isn't that so pretty? So I sent over just the strawberries and I taped 4 of the charms onto my cutting mat. The cutting machine is going to go ahead and cut them out for me. I do have the heat and bond on the back side of each one of these 4 pieces of fabric. And yep, you see tape on my mat. My mat is not very sticky, and that's actually how I like it. Once the strawberries are cut out, I'm going to send over the stems and the leaves on 4 of the green charms that were in this charm pack. Once I scan the mat, I can just make sure that each one of the images are centered right over top of the fabrics, right? And then the machine does the rest. Perfectly cuts them out for me. Once they're cut out, I can bring it over here and I'm just going to remove the tape. Lift up the fabric. And there are my shapes. So I arranged them on Canvas Workspace so that on each one of the 4 fabrics, I got a stem and a leaf. And now I can just mix match them on my project. Sort of like a controlled scrappy look. Now let's go back to the painted version. Here I have my placement guide, right? And I'm going to pull that over on my light pad and I'm going to bring over my fabric for my quilt top or my trivet top. I'm just going to center that right in the middle, just eyeballing it. I'm going to use my little magnets and my glow pad just to hold that fabric in place so it doesn't shift around as I'm tracing. Now for the painted version, I'm going to use a heat erasing pen. I'm finding my pen. There we go. This is a friction fine line pen. It erases with heat. And I'm going to go through and trace this design right onto my fabric for my trivet top. I absolutely love my new glow pad. It's humongous. Just go through and trace each one of these shapes. And that will be the painted version. Now for my fabric version, I'm going to bring in the tempered glass for my glow pad and my silicone mat. Y'all have seen me use the silicone mat before, but with the tempered glass, I can press right on top of my light pad. Isn't that awesome? So for the strawberries, I'm going to pre-fuse them into little clusters, just like you see me doing here, right? So the leaf goes up under the berry, the stem goes on top of the berry, Once this is cooled off, I can remove this from the silicone mat. And I'm going to do that for each of the 4 little clusters, right? Just prefuse them and turn 3 pieces into 1 applique. Then I'm going to center my top fabric right over top of the placement guide and just line up my fused strawberries with the leaves right on top. And then I'm going to use my heat erasing pen and just draw the circle shape all the way around. I'll use that to trim up all the extra fabric down the way. And now that we have our 2 trivet tops ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and create the layers of my trivet. I'm going to lay the back fabric down first with the right side facing down. Then I'm going to glue baste the quilt batting right to the back fabric. And then I'm going to center the tops right on top of each one of them. Now, because I've used heat erasing pen on the tops, on both tops, I'm going to have to just exercise my patience a little bit and let this air dry. Usually I use an iron and just speed up the drying process a little bit. We don't want to bring any wet glue over to the sewing machine for sure. So I'm just going to baste these together and just let them sit and completely air dry before we move on. Now, the fabric applique, we're going to do a round trivet, but the painted trivet, I'm just going to use one of my square rulers, and we're going to make this one a square. On the painted trivet, I thought I would take my heat erasing pen and just give myself some marks to do some crosshatch quilting in the background. I think that would be so pretty, right? So I'm going to do my cross hatching at 1 inch spacing. So I'm just using my Creative Grids ruler and marking the background area every inch. I'll do that one direction, skipping over the designs of the strawberries and the leaves, right? And then I'll go the other direction. I think that would be some beautiful background quilting on this trivet. It takes a minute though. I'm not gonna lie, it takes a minute. What's good is that I'm waiting for this glue basting to dry, so I had a minute to give it anyway. All right, so there's going to be my painted version. We're going to bring this over to the sewing machine after it's dry, y'all. This has had several hours. It's completely dry. The glue is not wet. And I have put on my free motion foot, and I'm going to go around and stitch all of the shapes that I've traced onto my top fabric, right? And any of the cross hatching lines that fall in the center of the strawberry design, I'm going to also stitch that with my free motion foot. I think it'll just make it a little bit easier to get those lines in the middle stitched. This means I'm going to be doing some traveling over stitched areas. And you have to do that every once in a while, right? I always think it's so much fun to watch people do free motion stitching. So I'm just going to bring you along as I stitch out this design. What's kind of neat is you start to see the dimension of the quilting, right? And I just work my way around each one of the shapes. And I've used a thread that just sort of blends into the background fabric, right? But I do think using a contrasting thread would be gorgeous, right? Like maybe a red thread, and maybe your trivet would look like red work. Wouldn't that be gorgeous? No, unfortunately, y'all, my microphone did not pick up the sewing machine noise. So when I watched this back, I was stitching in silence. So I'll go through and stitch the design, right? Isn't that pretty? And then I'm going to switch the foot over and I'm going to use my open toe foot so that I can see these lines really, really good. And now I just start stitching all of the traced lines for the cross hatching, right? And I like to start at the design and work my way out. And I do a little back stitch so that the quilting doesn't pull out over time. I have wanted to do strawberry projects since I quilted a quilt for my cousin Stacy a couple weeks ago. Her quilt was just so adorable, and I've just been in the mood for some strawberry pie. I haven't had that yet, but I finally did get a chance to knock out these strawberry projects, and I've just had so much fun with them. Now, of course, I will have quite a few little threads to trim once all of this quilting is done. And I think you get the idea of the cross hatching. I'm going to go ahead and move on here in just a second. But that's how I accomplished all the quilting of the painted version. And I did the stitching first. We'll paint it here in a minute. Now for the fabric applique, I've brought in that project, and again I'm using my open toe foot, and for the leaves I'm using a zigzag stitch. Now y'all, you could use any stitch in your machine that you wanted to use. I thought it would look really cute with a zigzag stitch, and I'm using a brown thread so that the thread sort of outlines each one of these shapes. I thought that that would be really cute, and I plan on using a brown binding to sort of just tie it all in, right? Now for the berry, I'm going to stitch that next. It goes over top of the leaf, but underneath of the stem, right? And I'm using a blanket stitch. I thought that that would be really cute. And I'm going to bring you through stitching a leaf, a berry, and a stem so that you can see how those are stitched, or how I stitched them. For the stems, I also used a blanket stitch, but I made it a little bit smaller. Now I'm not going to lie, this took a hot minute, right? Doing the free motion stitching on the other trivet, stitching down the applique on this trivet. But y'all, I think I just really needed some good quality time at my machine, and I just had so much fun. I think this is the perfect time of the year to make these, especially if you sell your items in a vending booth, right? If you do craft fairs, farmers markets, if you sell your projects online. This is the perfect time for projects like this as we're heading into the warmer months, right? I really, really like the blanket stitch on my applique. I think that that looks so sweet. So there is one stitched strawberry cluster. Now on this trivet, I thought I would do some free motion quilting in the background. Now I did think I was going to be real fancy. I don't know if you saw that, and quilt little strawberry blooms in the quilting, but today I just could not get my tension right, and I'm using a brown thread in my bobbin and a light thread that's just going to blend in with my top fabric, and I just could not get the tension right. So I nixed the idea of the blooms real quick and just did a little meandering stitch in the background. And you can just see the little fine line marker line where I traced that circle in the beginning, right? I'm just going to do my quilting right outside that line. And then as soon as I'm done with this quilting, I'm going to take a pair of scissors and trim right on that circle line that we traced from the placement guide. Now here's my brown binding. Y'all, I'm going to bring you along. You can see it's starting to get a little bit darker outside. I was here all day doing this. For the circle trivets, if you want to make your trivets circle, you're going to need bias binding. Now, I have this video. I will link it down in the description box if you've never made that. But bias binding will curve nice and smooth for your circle, your round, your curved projects, right? So if you haven't seen that video and you want to check it out, that will be linked in the description box down below. And I also have a video, I don't know if you've seen it, on how to connect the ends of your binding. What I'm doing right here on the screen. I do have a video showing you how to do that. And it's pretty short and sweet and gets to the point. So we're not going to go into all those details here today. I really miss the sound of the sewing machine. So on this round trivet, I attached the binding to the to the front side first, and then folded it over to the back. And then I will just stitch right in that seam where the binding is on the front, just to secure the binding on the back. Now I'll cut this binding at 2 inches. It's a little thin. I almost wish I would have cut it a little bit wider, but it's super cute, right? Now for the painted version, let's come over here to my table, and today I'm going to be using the golden fabric medium, the GAC 900, and I love this stuff, right? It dries pretty soft. It's going to keep the mediums in the fabric so you can wash them and dry them in the machine, right? And I'm going to break out my Derwent Inktense pencils today. Y'all, I haven't used these since, well, way before the big move last year. So I came across them the other day and I was like, you know what? I really want to use these in a project. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. I just use a fabric medium to wet the fabric. And these pencils are awesome. Do you see the color that just pops? These are ink, right? And it's permanent on fabric. The colors just pop. I don't know why I always forget that I have these. They're just so much fun to use. So there's many different techniques on how to use these pencils. You could just color on the fabric dry and then activate the ink with like an aloe or a fabric medium like what I'm doing. But I kind of like to see the colors pop right away. So I wet the fabric first and then use my pencils. And I'm just going to bring you through a time lapse of me painting this design. And at this point it was getting pretty late. It's dark outside, but I was just so enthralled in these projects. I didn't even really notice what time it was. Now I just want to say, you do not have to be an artist to have fun with these types of mediums, right? As long as you are having fun, isn't that the whole point? I haven't used these pencils. It has been well over a year, and I really feel like I'm out of practice, right? And painting on fabric is a whole other deal, right? The fabric just takes paint and ink and things like that way differently than paper does, don't you think? Or a canvas. But it is so much fun. If you've never tried this, I just encourage you to try it. It's just like coloring, right? It's like coloring. It is a lot of fun. Now, I looked at the video. This part, coloring this design, took me 55 minutes. We're not going to sit here for 55 minutes as I color it in. But Yeah, a good hour I was here coloring this, and it was so much fun. That hour went by so fast for me. Then I come in with the black pencil and give myself some little seeds on my strawberries. Isn't that so cute? Now, at some point, I heard a voice saying, Lisa, just stop. And I kept on going and I kept on going. Do you ever feel yourself telling yourself, like, Lisa, that's enough? And then you reach a point where you're like, wow, I probably should have stopped and not done that. But I keep on going. I do think that this turned out really great. I feel like I'm out of practice. Do you know what I'm saying? But I had an awful lot of fun. Now I'm done with my pencils and I'm going to let this sit overnight. And we're going to come back the next day. Ta-da! And I'm just going to cover my painting with a piece of a pillowcase, y'all. It's a cotton pillowcase that I've cut apart. And I'm just going to heat set that design. And that makes it so that you can wash and dry it. Isn't that cool? And since we're going to use this as a trivet, I imagine at some point I will probably wash it and put it through the dryer. Now I've decided that this project was a little bit too big, so I'm going to take my 12.5-inch ruler and just square it up and make it a little bit smaller. And I think that's more appropriate, right? I like this size a lot. And I'm going to bring in some fabric markers, y'all. Well, that's really cute and I love it. I felt like it needed a little bit more pops of some darker green. So I broke out my Marvy fabric markers and I'm just going to add a little bit of like some shading, some more definition into the green parts of my painting. I think I could have gotten this level of darkness with the Derwent, but I think it would have taken like multiple painting sessions to build up that color, right? And sometimes I'm just not that patient. Now the fabric markers, I will have to heat set that again once it's fully dry. And then I'll come in with my Micron pen and just darken up the seeds. But isn't that so pretty? I love that. Now for the seeds on the applique trivet, there's so many things you could do, right? You could use the fabric marker. You could use the Derwent Inktense. You could use beads. You could do like a long little hand stitch, right? With some black embroidery thread. I've decided to use some cotton pearl thread and do little, what are they called? French knots. I think that's French knots. And those will be my little seeds for my strawberries, right? Isn't that super cute? I'm going to be using this as a trivet. So I didn't want anything like beads that might scratch up my dishes and whatnot, might even get broken or melted, who knows. So these little knots work perfectly for the seeds on this particular trivet. I've even been using my trivet as little mats for when I do my canning. They work so great, and it's a cute little decoration sitting on your countertop with jars of jelly on top of them. Imagine some strawberry jam sitting on top of them, cooling off. So I'm just going to bring you through, and this has been a long time since I've done this stitch too, y'all. So you see me making a few little goof ups, but I just keep on going. And I did not mark where to place the seeds on the pattern because I really feel like you might want more seeds than I did. You might want less seeds than I did. So I just go through. I don't even do the same number of seeds on each one of the different strawberries, right? But it adds just a perfect little touch to these strawberries, don't you think? Now there is my circle trivet. She's all done now. Don't you think that that is just so cute? She's ready to go to the kitchen. There's the back side. This one was using the bias binding. Go check out that video if you've never made that before. And the square trivet, I just used a regular quilt binding, right? I didn't have to make sure that it was cut on the bias. I love the crosshatch quilting. The backside's a little bit messy from the thread cutter on my sewing machine, but I'll clean that up. So there's my two different versions. I would love to see what you do with yours if you want to share on the Creative Crew. Thanks for watching, y'all. I hope this inspires you to break out some supplies that you haven't used in a while and have fun. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon. Bye.